Do I need to talk about why there hadn't been a blog for the last 8 months?
No.
Okay.
Just a new Goodsell blog. Here we are.
Ladies and gentlemen, here we are. It's time for a long overdue Goodsell blog. Maybe I just didn't have anything to talk about, but now there's so much to talk about. And today's topic is the need for tweed. And a lot of people's reaction is going to be, well, that's all we need is more tweed. Everybody does tweed. I determined there was a need for tweed when I'm reading my electronic editions of all the guitar magazines at night before I go to bed, and I'm looking at the ads and the reviews and whatnot, and I've seen a Champ. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I've seen a Champ clone, one knob, 8-inch speaker, little chintzy watch band handle on top, $1,200. I build the Champton Plus with a 10-inch speaker, 8-watt output transformer, a tone control that you can pull for additional boost, and a big fat brown leather handle on top. Not the little cheesy one, but a fat brown leather handle on top. And I sell that for $7.99. So either one of us is real high or one of us is real low. What I'm working on here is I needed a product or a series of products that I can make in larger quantities, that I can, I can hire some manufacturing help, and if I can make 25 or 50 or 75 or 100 at a time, then on the economy of scale, I can save money. I'll have a product I can sell while I still build the custom stuff. But it can't just be arbitrary tweed copies. I mean, that's no fun at all. I mean, who needs another Tweed Deluxe? Really, who needs one? So the Champton, which is already out there, and it's been selling real well for nearly 2 years. It accounted for maybe half of the units I built last year. The Champton and the Champton Plus, which most of the Champtons are now, the Champton Plus being a 5881 driven 8-watt Champ type amp with a 10-inch speaker in it. In order for the Tweed to make sense, I've got to be able to offer something that all the other Tweed guys don't have. I had to come up with stuff that's different enough where it would make sense to even take a second look at it in terms of features or whatnot, and the value's got to be there. There's got to be bang for the buck. I mean, I've seen a lot of $2,500 tweeds that are in the that are under 12 watts, and I just think that for $2,500 I'll build you a 33-watt 2x12. So here's what I'm going to do. Initially, I'm going to, over and above the Champton, which will continue as it always has, I'm going to make 3 models based on the 5F2 Tweed. I'm not really supposed to say the P word, but every 5F2, look it up. It's it's the next thing in line after the Champton. 5F2 cabinet, which would ordinarily back in the day would come with an 8-inch speaker in it, inexplicably, because not only is there room to upgrade it to a 10, but you can actually get a full-size 12 in a 5F2 cabinet. So the next order of business is to go make a 5F2, which is a whole lot like the Champton. Give that 5F2 the same feature set that the Champton has, so it'll have the pull for boost tone knob. It'll have instead of an 8-inch speaker, it'll have a 12. So you can think of it as an oversized Champton if you like. The feature set, single 5881, 8 watts, just a bigger form factor, larger speaker, and just a good looking piece of gear. So that would be the first iteration. And the next step up, it occurs to me that there's enough room in the 5F2 cabinet. It's like, what if we took the chassis cutout, the part where the control panel shows through, and bumped that up to the same size cutout that's on the 5E3, Turns out the 5E3 chassis fits in the 5F2 perfectly if you make certain accommodations. It not only does it fit in there perfectly, but it's almost as though it were destined to happen. But you can get a 5E3 chassis in there and still have room for a full-size 12-inch speaker. The next level would be what's called a parallel single-ended amp. The Champton and the 5F2 are single-ended, which is to say they have one tube, as opposed to push-pull. It has one tube, and anytime you have an amp with one tube, it's categorically Class A. In fact, it's really the only time you're ever going to run into a Class A amp, and single-ended amps are, by definition, Class A. That's the only way they can operate. No such thing as a single-ended AB or AB1. They're all Class A. And that's important to some people. That it has its own distinct sound. But you can also take a single-ended amp and you can parallel two output tubes together. I'm taking a look at a 5F2A using a 5E3 chassis, which has the holes cut out just right, to have two 6V6s running in parallel, not push-pull. We'll get to that in a minute, but two 6V6s in parallel for 10 watts of output, Class A, volume knob, tone knob, and if it can be sold at a decent price, then hopefully you guys will beat a path to my door. So that's the second iteration, is double single-ended or parallel single-ended, two 6V6s, 10 watts, be a bigger transformer than the regular 5F2. It'll probably have a 15-watt transformer. Maybe we can pinch a little bit more than 10 watts out of it, but on paper, 10 watts is about what it's good for. Also, when we go to the second tier of the 5F2A concept here, what is interesting, even though this cabinet is slightly smaller than a 5E3 cabinet, it'll do something the 5E3 cabinet won't. And that's 2/8, a 2x8 configuration, diagonal, no clearance issues whatsoever. For 8-inch speakers is Layla was recorded on a Tweed amp that had a single 8 in it, and these two gold records here, which I bought on eBay. Let's face it, I was only 10 years old when they recorded Layla, but that's what those are. And the guitar tracks on these records behind me were recorded with an 8-inch speaker on a 5-watt amp. But having a choice of a single 12 or two 8s, I know that's going to be news. But so that takes us to our third level, and that is, it's going to look just like the second level. It's going to have the same, it's going to have the same chassis. It's going to have the same control surface. It's going to have your choice of a 12 or a pair of 8s, but it's literally going to be a 5E3. There's a couple of changes that I gotta Goodsell it up a little bit. There's a couple of capacitors and so forth that I personally wouldn't have chosen. They got what's called a mud cap on the front end, and I changed the value of the first stage, first interstage cap. Blah blah blah, geek stuff, but brighten it up a little bit. Retain its ability to stay dark if it needs to. But here's what we're going to do. Right now, a 5E3 has 4 inputs, which is ridiculous. You got an amp this big with 4 inputs. You can eliminate one of those channels, and it gives you a half of a triode, 12AX7 or 12AY7 or whatever, for a trim oscillator, for a tremolo, tube bias varied tremolo oscillator. And of those 4 inputs, you can take 2 of the jacks out and put in a speed and depth knob, and presto, one of those knobs now becomes a master volume, a post-phase inverter master. The leftover triode becomes the tremolo driver, and the input jacks for the bright channel the input jacks for the bright channel are now the knobs for speed and depth. So in summary, you've got a 5E3 Tweed amp in a 5F2 cabinet, wired exactly like a 5E3 would be back in the day, with the option to, it'll have a push-pull pot, maybe even two, to engage or disengage a bright cap, so you can have the vintage kind of old brownish tweed sound, or you pull the cap, you pull the knob up, and you get a more modern, kind of a more streamlined, less muddy voicing. All right, you get that. You're in a 5F2 box. You've got a master volume. You've got tremolo. All right, so that's tweed that nobody else has. I mean, you know, call me crazy. Write me letters and let me hear back from you. If it's nuts, tell me. But I'm gonna go. I'm doing this. I'm doing this. I'm looking at it right here, and there'll be some pictures. And yeah, I'll continue to narrate while our photographer.
And just grabs it up.
Oh.
You know, why not?
Okay. All right. Sure. Okay. So this is a 5F2 cabinet. All right. It is about 2 inches narrower than a Tweed Deluxe. Maybe a little bit more, 2.5 inches narrower. On this dimension, it's 1 inch less in depth. And the weird part is it's about not quite an inch, maybe 3/4 of an inch taller. But it's also what makes a diagonal pair of 8s a possibility. So you got one down there and you got one up here. I mean, ladies and gentlemen, this is called prototyping. You're watching the birth of an amp. I mean, you're in the birthing room. You've got your scrubs on. You've got your face mask on. You're ready to catch the fluids and whatnot. This is the birth of an amp idea. So an 8 here, an 8 there, and check this out. Ah! Okay. All right. What we have here. This metal chassis is literally a 5E3 chassis. I mean, if you look at how it's screened, you got your ground switch over here, power switch, fuse. You got tone, volume, and you'll see these two knobs right here. You see you got a normal channel input 1 and 2. The knobs kind of cover it up, but that's speed and depth. This is now a master volume because it no longer needs to control the bright channel. And this is your normal volume, or what I would probably call a gain. I'd call that gain and call that volume. And the tone control would work as before. But look at this. 5E3 with lots of extras, smaller box, lots of goodies. And ladies and gentlemen, I can't emphasize this enough. I mean, you know, people think I'm nuts, but look at this handle, okay? I have seen $1,200 champs with a little, little watch band of a handle. I have read the reviews on certain signature model Tweed amps that have the skinny strap on it. They got a 1-star review, a $2,500 amp with a 1-star review because the guy ripped the handle off, taking it out of the packaging material. And you're not going to pay $2,500 for this. I don't know what you're going to pay, but it's going to be probably $1,000 south of $2,500, I would imagine. And you're going to get, and this goes for the Champton, it goes for all of anything I do in, well, all of my amps either use this big fat brown one or there's a black one kind of like it also. But anyway, get a good look at this. We're going to edit for time and content, Stephen, yes. But if I look up like that, you can't see my double chin. But anyway, so here it is, the control surface of the, this is a 5F2 with a 5F3 chassis with a master volume and tremolo. Okay, it's a beautiful thing. This ground switch, which those of you who dabble with old amps, this is often called a death switch, and there's a lot of people that build Tweed Deluxe clones that make this the standby switch, and that's what it'll be here. It'll say ground on it, but that'll be standby, which is kind of a common practice in the business of reissuing these things. Even if you go to, you know, the original company, they've changed this to a standby switch. But there you have it. You got versatility, you've got power, you've got cuteness, you get 2x8s or 1x12. This thing appears to be tipping the scales. Right now it's got a RGC speaker in it. That's a pretty substantial magnet. And this one right here, there's your rectifier, your two 6V6s, a couple of 12AX7s. This puppy weighs 27 pounds with this big speaker in there. I mean, with a vintage Jensen or you know, something lighter, a little P12Q. I mean, this thing would weigh 24 pounds, 23 pounds maybe. But in any event, there you have it. I can tell by the clock on the wall that I've talked way too long, and I'm sure that it's going to be edited down. But I'm trying to give you good material to work with. My producer is telling me to wrap it up. But anyway, I'm excited. Hope you guys are too. If you feel like it and you want to, of course, there's a comment area directly below this video, or you can you know, hit me up on Facebook or whatever. But that's it. The need for tweed. Hope you need it as bad as I do. And sayonara for now. There'll be more on this later. I guarantee it.
Fabulous.